Ukraine is offering up to $50 billion of its own money for US weapons. Ready to pay, ready to fight. The deal includes two of the most powerful weapons in Ukraine's arsenal. It's bold, strategic, urgent. But there's a catch. Zelenskyy made the offer, Trump said no. So what exactly is Ukraine trying to buy? Why did Trump turn them down? And how could this decision shift the entire course of the war? Let's break it down. On April 9th, Zelenskyy spoke to journalists about the current state of Ukraine's brave defense against Putin's invasion of his country. In particular, he focused on the subject of US aid to Ukraine, which has been a difficult subject in recent months. Zelensky's roller-coaster relationship with Trump led the US to suspending all direct military aid to Ukraine in early March, briefly leaving Zelensky's forces in the lurch. That suspension was lifted shortly after it was put in place, but it sent a clear message to Ukraine. It may not be able to rely on US support forever. When quizzed about the current state of US aid to his country, Zelenskyy pointed out that the funds allocated under former President Joe Biden have yet to be fully spent. According to Defense Express, the US has allocated more than $66 billion of weaponry to Ukraine, which is divided into two packages. $32.85 billion was allocated under Biden's Presidential Drawdown Authority, which means the weapons in this package were drawn from America's existing stockpiles and have either already reached Ukraine or are on their way. The other $33.2 billion went to the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, or USAI, which is a fund through which Ukraine can convert the money sent to it into weapons. Under the USAI, Ukraine places orders for specific weapons it needs from the US, with Defense Express noting that those orders won't be converted into delivered weapons until sometime in 2027. Both are impressive packages. However, Zelenskyy says that Ukraine wants more, much more. "We handed over to the American side a large package that we want to buy," he told journalists when revealing that Ukraine is willing to spend its own money on US weapons. "Many different formats and tools that we are ready for. We are ready to find both $30 billion and $50 billion for a suitable package." Yeah, you heard that right. Ukraine is ready to spend up to $50 billion on American weapons. "There is an agreement, we are giving money," Zelenskyy said at the time. "Accordingly, if you want, we can either pay to this Reconstruction Investment Fund or to the US directly. It makes no difference to us." So not only is Zelenskyy offering to pump up to $50 billion into the US defense industry, but he's willing to work alongside the Trump administration to make the transfer of that money as simple as possible. That leads us to two important questions right off the bat. What would Ukraine look to buy, and how would it purchase these weapons from the US? Zelenskyy hasn't provided many specific details about the $50 billion order he's placed with the US. However, there are two obvious choices for Ukraine when it comes to American weapons: Patriot missile systems and F-16 fighter jets. The former is practically a given on the order, says Defense Express. Zelenskyy has stated that at least some of the weapons Ukraine intends to buy will go toward bolstering Ukraine's flagging air defense systems, which are currently attempting to defend the country against Putin's vicious aerial attacks. We only need to look at what happened in Sumy on April 13th to see why those systems are needed. Putin chose that day, which is Palm Sunday in Ukraine, to launch a devastating aerial attack against the city of Sumy that predominantly targeted civilians. Russia launched ballistic missiles, including its nuclear-capable Iskander-Ms, at Sumy, killing 35 people and injuring over 100 more in a devastating Easter attack that left Ukraine reeling. Could that attack have been prevented if Ukraine had more Patriot missile systems? Possibly. It certainly could have been mitigated because the Patriot is built specifically to counter threats such as the Russian Iskander-M. A long-range and all-altitude air defense system, Patriot, which stands for Phased Array Tracking Radar to Intercept on Target, is designed to tackle a variety of threats, including advanced aircraft and both cruise and ballistic missiles. The Iskander-M falls into the latter category. Both modular and extremely mobile, the Patriot fires powerful surface-to-air or SAM missiles at its targets, and is among the most advanced air defense systems in the world. Each Patriot launcher can carry up to 4 missiles, with those missiles being equipped with a track-via missile guidance system that provides course correction commands as the missile is in flight. That intelligent target acquisition system also allows it to fire multiple missiles from a Patriot launcher, with each being capable of striking a separate target. How much firepower the missile delivers when it reaches its target depends on the specific variant being used. However, generally, a Patriot missile has a 198-pound warhead and can travel up to 43.4 miles while reaching a maximum altitude of 14.9 miles, more than enough to take out most incoming aerial threats. Each Patriot missile launcher is loaded onto the back of an M860 semi-trailer, which can be towed by several types of trucks to give the launcher its mobility. Don't underestimate the importance of being able to move the launchers. Ukraine has used that feature constantly in its fight against Russia. transferring Patriot launchers to where it believes they're needed most so they can fire on incoming aerial threats before being moved away so that Russia can't track them and destroy them. After being launched, a Patriot missile is tracked via the system's phased array radar. For PAC-2 variants, guidance is provided entirely from the ground, with the radar continuing to steer the missile throughout its flight. In contrast, the PAC-3 features an onboard active radar seeker that takes over during the terminal phase, allowing the missile to home in on its target independently. What that hit entails depends on the variant. PAC-2 detonates near the incoming threat to create a destructive blast radius, while a PAC-3 aims for a precise direct impact. That collection of capabilities is what makes the Patriot so desired, both in Ukraine and elsewhere. However, that desire also creates problems. As Defense Express notes, Ukraine has only received about half of the Patriot batteries it requested from its allies. That shortfall comes not from those allies actively preventing Ukraine from getting its hands on more Patriots, but because those countries want to keep the systems for themselves. There's also the payment challenge. Each Patriot battery, along with the missiles that Ukraine has received so far, has been donated by other countries. If it's buying directly from the US, it will likely have to spend around $15 billion per Patriot system package, which is the price Poland is paying under its Wisla program. Each package includes 48 launchers, 12 radars, and an unspecified number of missiles. Ukraine would also likely need to order more missiles. We have some indication on the price from a 2024 order the Pentagon made for 870 missiles. The US will pay its manufacturers $4.5 billion for those 870 missiles. Works out to about $5.17 million per missile. If Ukraine is buying, the odds are that it will have to pay an export charge on top of that. Plus, there's another problem Ukraine may face with its Patriot order: availability. Poland doesn't expect to receive the Patriot package it's paid for until the end of the 2020s, demonstrating that there's an ordering backlog Ukraine will have to navigate, even if it's willing to pay for the systems. That backlog is so extensive that countries like Greece, which already has 6 active Patriot batteries, are already considering alternatives to the Patriot to bolster their aerial defenses. Lockheed Martin, which manufactures Patriot missiles, only plans to build 600 of them for all of its customers in 2025. Given that the US has placed an order for more than that already, and other countries are waiting, Ukraine may face a multi-year delay before it gets the Patriot systems it orders. Still, Ukraine is willing to spend the money and grease the wheels in whatever way it can. That brings us to the second weapon Ukraine may be looking to buy from the US: F-16 Fighting Falcons. Ukraine already has a small stockpile of these US fighter jets, the first of which arrived in the country in August 2024 after a multi-year campaign by Zelenskyy to encourage donations. It's putting the few jets it has to good use. Ukraine's F-16s have already been used to shoot down Russian cruise missiles multiple times during the war, showcasing its capability as an air defense unit. This includes one instance where a Ukrainian pilot managed to shoot down 6 missiles in a single mission, a first that Ukraine says even an American F-16 operator wouldn't believe. More recently, Ukraine has been exploring the use of its F-16s as attacking units that could drop bombs on key Russian positions just behind the front lines. It's obvious why Ukraine wants more F-16s. The jets are far more capable than the Soviet-era fighters that make up much of Ukraine's existing air force, even though the first of the jets was delivered to the US in 1979. Don't let the age fool you. F-16s are multi-role fighters that are extremely maneuverable and have proven themselves time and again in both air-to-surface and air-to-air missions. Each jet can reach speeds of up to 1,500 miles per hour, which is approximately twice the speed of sound, and has a range of 2,002 miles. That, combined with a 50,000-foot combat ceiling, means Ukraine can keep its F-16s in the air for hours at a time to both defend against Russian threats and launch attacks. Speaking of defense and attack, the jet's potential loadouts also demonstrate why Ukraine wants more of them. If used as a bomber, the F-16 can carry a pair of 2,000-pound precise bombs to drop on its Russian targets. As a defensive unit, the jet comes loaded with AIM-9 and AIM-120 missiles, along with an M61A1 20mm multi-barrel cannon equipped with 500 rounds. Those missiles and cannon proved essential to the previously mentioned Ukrainian pilot who shot down 6 Russian missiles, with the cannon allowing him to take out the last 2 when he was already on his way back to base. F-16s are more realistic targets for Ukraine's bumper spending proposal. Each jet typically costs between $25 and $70 million, depending on the variant and included systems. And the F-16 remains one of the most common fighter jets in the world. The US itself has 939 of them, according to Statista, which means Ukraine has the option of buying second-hand jets to supplement the drip feed of F-16s it's getting from its European partners. If Ukraine orders new F-16s, Defense Express says it may have to wait until 2028 to get its hands on them, making buying second-hand an even more attractive and plausible option. And that brings us to our next question. Just how does Ukraine plan to buy these weapons? America's Excess Defense Articles program offers one possibility. Through this program, the US offers to sell what it dubs excess articles, which are weapons that it doesn't need anymore, for a reduced price as an alternative to disposing of those weapons. Typically, the weapon itself is free, with the purchasing side covering the cost of transporting and refurbishing the weapon to make it usable. Defense Express points out the example of a recent offer of 200 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles to Greece. The vehicles themselves were free, however Greece would have needed to spend $1.82 billion on transport and refurbishment, leading to the country refusing the offer. Ukraine might be more than willing to splash that cash. Failing participation in the Excess Defense Articles program, Ukraine also has the option of creating an offset agreement. Under such agreements, Ukraine could offer to transfer some form of internal economic activity to the US in return for the sale of these weapons. These unconventional agreements typically see the buying country offer an attractive investment to the seller, who pays for that investment through the provision of its goods. Poland already uses such an agreement. It used the offset model to buy several factories for its defense industry, which now produce TNT that the US buys to fill its 155mm shells. To make use of such an agreement, Ukraine would have to offer something that the US wants. It has that something: rare earth mineral. Ukraine's rare earth minerals offer a ton of value and, some may argue, are one of the reasons why Putin launched his February 2022 invasion. In particular, Ukraine is home to around 5% of the world's supply of critical raw materials, which include over 19 tons of graphite, around 7% of global titanium reserves, and about a third of Europe's lithium deposits. Other materials in Ukraine include uranium, zinc, silver, and copper, along with a group of 17 rare earth metals that are used to build everything from weapons to wind turbines. Right now, around $350 billion worth of those materials are in the territories Russia occupies in Ukraine. In good news for Ukraine, the US wants those materials. It's already negotiating with Ukraine for access to them, which could create an opening for Ukraine to make an alternative offer. If the US provides Ukraine with the weapons it needs to drive Putin's forces away, Ukraine could repay it by allowing US companies to invest in and profit from its vast mineral and rare earth resources. That would certainly be preferable to one of the earlier versions of the minerals deal the US offered to Ukraine, which would see the US claim all of the profits from sales until Ukraine repays the money supposedly donated to it under former President Joe Biden's administration. You could also argue that such an offset agreement would act as a security guarantee that covers Ukraine in the future. If the US has vested investment interests in the territories that Putin wants to claim, it will help Ukraine to defend those interests. All of this sounds ideal for Ukraine. The headline is that it's ready to spend up to $50 billion on US weapons in whatever way works best for the Trump administration. But there's a twist to the tale that Ukraine never could have expected. Trump has already said no. Despite Zelensky's earlier claims that Ukraine is currently negotiating with the US to buy some of its weapons, Trump appears to have dismissed Ukraine's efforts. The US president's refusal comes following an interview Zelenskyy held with CBS News. During that interview, Zelenskyy offered to buy 10 Patriot missile systems for $15 billion, noting that Ukraine could use them to defend its cities against attacks like the one seen in Sumy just a day before. "We will find the money and pay for everything," Zelenskyy said. Trump's response was a strange tirade in which he levied the blame for the Ukraine war at the feet of Putin, Biden, and Zelenskyy. Trump claimed that millions of people are now dead because that trio couldn't stop Putin's invasion before it happened, or create a deal when it was underway. The most distressing thing about Trump's comments, from the Ukrainian perspective, is that Trump seemed to blame Ukraine for the situation it's in now. You don't start a war against someone 20 times your size and then hope that people will give you some missiles, Trump declared during a White House meeting, adding that Zelenskyy is always looking to purchase missiles from the United States. UNN offers a further twist to the story, noting that at least a portion of the $50 billion Ukraine is offering to the US would come from funds dedicated to Ukraine by the European Union or EU. So not only has Trump said no to selling weapons to Ukraine, but he appears to be saying no to dealing with the EU to get those weapons to where they're needed. So where does this leave Ukraine's $50 billion weapons proposal? Is it dead in the water? Not necessarily. Though Trump has outwardly refused to sell any Patriot missile systems to Ukraine, we know that his relationship with Zelenskyy is tumultuous. It's very possible that Putin might do something to anger the US president in the coming weeks, which would bring the US back on the side of Ukraine. That's happened in the past. In late March, Trump declared he was pissed off at Putin, following the Russian leader's suggestion that Zelenskyy should be removed from office. The US president said that he might consider placing secondary sanctions on Russian oil in response to Putin's comments, demonstrating that it's possible for Russia to anger Trump into taking action that he hasn't previously taken. Ukraine might hope that Putin will do something else to anger Trump, potentially opening the door for its desired weapons deals. Zelenskyy might also hope that Trump is saying one thing in public while being willing to negotiate with Ukraine behind the scenes. Again, that's a possibility. Trump's logic for refusing to sell weapons to Ukraine may be rooted in his attempts to bring a swift end to the Ukraine war. Selling weapons could be seen as an escalation. If Russia continues to bomb Ukraine while Putin lies about wanting a ceasefire, that may make Trump more open to selling weapons. If nothing else, he could use the sales as leverage to force Putin back to the negotiating table. Failing that, Ukraine may have to look toward alternatives. Could be the answer. The Guardian argued on April 14th, the same day Trump refused to sell to Ukraine, that European countries should accept a higher risk tolerance for donating weapons to Ukraine. In other words, they should dig deeper into their stockpiles of artillery, air defense units, and rockets to give Ukraine what it needs to fight against Putin now. If Ukraine can offer $50 billion for those weapons, the European countries that are hesitating may be willing to part with them because they know they're getting money to spend on replacements. The same outlet also argues that France and the United Kingdom, which are among the largest non-US contributors to Ukraine, should try to strike a deal with the US to deliver more air defense units to Ukraine. That idea could give Zelenskyy options. He could lean on nations that have more stable relationships with the US to get what he wants indirectly by leveraging the combined power of key European nations. Right now, we don't know which option Ukraine will take. All we know for sure is that Ukraine has offered the US $50 billion and Trump has said no. What happens from here may depend heavily on how the US views both Zelenskyy and Putin in the coming weeks. But what do you think about Ukraine's massive offer to the US? Are you shocked that Trump has refused what would amount to a substantial investment into the US economy? Can Zelenskyy change Trump's mind and secure the weapons Ukraine needs to take the fight to Russia? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more commentary on the latest developments in the Ukraine war.